Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and I just wanted to drop in for a quick second to tell you that this podcast is really gaining popularity, and in order for us to continue growing like this, I'd love it if you could rate and review us on iTunes. Plus, I'm always excited to hear feedback and continue to improve our content based on what you want to hear. I know I'm in. Are you? Why did both Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak get fired? Will Magic Johnson turn the Lakers into a contender? Who won the trade between the Lakers and the Rockets today? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown Podcast. Today, I'm excited to bring on the show Trevor Lane, who's a senior writer for Lakers Nation and host of Courtcast, the Lakers Nation podcast. So, Trevor, thank you for coming on a little, late night podcast here to talk a lot about what happened today, the carnage, the insanity, the Lakers. Where should we start?
My goodness, it has been an incredible day. First of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, and I'm glad to hop on with you anytime. But man, this day has just been insane. It's been nonstop, one thing after another, one rumor after another, and all I can say is I love NBA basketball. This has been great, seeing all the activity around the Lakers. It's certainly been an exciting day. But I guess the place to start would be at the beginning. The Lakers this morning announced that they were letting go of their general manager, Mitch Kupchak, and the head of their basketball operations department, Jim Buss, who also owns part of the team. They removed him from that position, and they brought in Magic Johnson. What an incredible move. I guess the writing has been on the wall for that for quite a while, since Magic was announced as an advisor for the team. But to see it all go down just a few days before the trade deadline was certainly shocking, to say the least.
Well, let's go through the timeline, because I started doing some searching through to find out how did this all work, and I found a great article by Kevin Ding on the 2nd of February that was announcing them bringing in Magic as an advisor. However, there already seemed to be the writing on the wall, and he even mentioned it there, where there was already sort of grumblings in the background that Mitch Kupchak might not be long for his job, and certainly he outlined how Jim Buss would get thrown out by a vote of the siblings. So, but you're right, the idea that they would do this 2 days before the trade deadline, when there probably are plenty of trades they could make, and we have one to talk about, is insanity. And so I have to imagine a lot of this is related to the Boogie trade.
Yeah, that's the rumor that came out today that we saw, was that DeMarcus Cousins was a lifeline for Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss, that if they had been able to deal for him, that maybe, just maybe, they may have been able to save their jobs. But when he went to New Orleans, to the Pelicans, for that, shall we say, light trade package, that was sort of the nail in the coffin for both Jim and Mitch, and that was when Jeannie made up her mind. She was tired of seeing superstars slip through their fingers, and decided that enough was enough, and it was time for a change.
So here's what I'm thinking happened. We can picture the scenario here is they announced the trade, and that was a surprise as well. And again, like you said, it was not a great trade. In fact, Vlade got his hose cleaned, I feel like, on this one. But Magic must have picked up the phone, called up Jeannie, and said, "What is going on? How can we have not made a better pitch to get Boogie Cousins? You need to have this, the center. You need to have that guy. Like we've had Shaq and Kareem in the past." And then I think so that must have started it, right? Can you imagine any other scenario here?
No, that sounds pretty accurate as far as what went down. You know what? Let me throw in this one little caveat here, is that with this trade, the rumor was, or word was, that Brandon Ingram was the piece that the Kings wanted, and that Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss decided that they would not include him. Now stop and think about that for a second. They knew that their jobs were going to be on the line with this move, and they still decided not to include Ingram. Now that's either extremely foolish, or there's some noble element to this, where you've got Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss deciding that the future of the franchise is more important than either of their jobs. And I think that's part of the story that is being underreported at this point.
Absolutely, and I don't blame them. I mean, we've talked about this a lot on our show. Boogie is a singular talent, but he also comes fraught with all sorts of baggage. And I keep saying this. I mean, I've seen it live in person in practice before, and it's terrible. It's horrible. And now you're starting to hear some of the Kings folks, finally letting out a lot of steam and letting you in some insight into what was going on in the background. That players hated playing with him, and I don't doubt it. In fact, they were talking about Stauskas almost being ruined by having to play with him on the same team and dealing with him every day without anyone trying to explain to Boogie that that's not like a good idea as a teammate. So I would agree with that, and I could also feel like, I mean, I always felt like Ingram. I'm kind of curious your thoughts. Is Ingram that guy that you think could develop into the star they're looking for?
He could. I mean, the jury's out. He certainly hasn't had that explosive rookie season that I think a lot of fans were hoping for. I mean, everybody was hearing he's the next Kevin Durant, despite me screaming, no, he's not. It didn't seem to matter that much because everybody heard, oh, he's the next KD, and so they were expecting that. And so people have been a little bit down on Ingram so far this year, but you know what? He's the type of player where at least once every game he does something and you just go, wow, that's supernatural. That's not normal for a player to be able to do that. I mean, his arms just seem to go on forever. So the potential is certainly there, but he's so young. It's going to take a while before the Lakers really know what they have. But out of their young core, out of D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle, Larry Nance Jr., and Ingram, and of course you can throw Clarkson in there, maybe even Tarik Black, and of course Ivica Zubac, who is practically at godlike status here in Lakerland. But out of all of them, Ingram seems to have the highest potential. Now I don't know if that means that he's going to be a superstar or not, but he does seem to have the potential to hit that level.
And I don't want to, throw any shade in anybody who thinks he's the next Kevin Durant, because he moves like Kevin Durant. He looks the same kind of body that Kevin had coming out of college. So I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I think the way he plays and his sort of the way he plays in the moment is more like a Scottie Pippen. And that's what he could develop into, which, is a top 50 player of all time, right?
Absolutely, and you're right. He does move like KD when you see him out on the floor. I mean, there's some similarities that go beyond just body type, the way he moves, the way he carries himself, and everything. But he's not the shooter that Kevin Durant is. So that's a big factor. But you know what? Hey, if he becomes, whatever he becomes, if it's, people have said he's going to be the next Giannis Antetokounmpo, or Scottie Pippen or whoever. I've seen Tayshaun Prince. I've seen all kinds of comparisons for him. But the bottom line is that if he gets to the level of some of those guys, that's a pretty darn good second overall pick. Whether or not he becomes a true superstar or not, we don't know. But there's plenty of reason to be optimistic about the future of Brandon Ingram.
For sure. And so, I wouldn't get too upset about them not wanting to include him, because I think what would the deal have been? Let's go over that real quickly. It would have been Ingram, I'm assuming Randall, and, who else?
Probably would have been Lou Williams.
Oh,
so you probably would have been looking at Ingram, maybe Julius Randle, and Lou Williams. We don't really know for sure. They haven't said exactly what the deal would have been. It sounded more like the Kings said, hey, if we do a deal with you, then Ingram has to be involved. And the Lakers said, okay, well, no thanks. We're not going to put him in there. And that was kind of the end of it. That was the deal breaker, was if there was no Ingram, that was it. But we can imagine that the Kings would probably ask for Ingram and Russell and then another piece, and the Lakers maybe counter with, if they were interested in trading Ingram, maybe it goes to Ingram and Randall and Lou Williams, or it could have been Jose Calderon's expiring contract, or you would need a few of those pieces in order to match Boogie's salary.
Okay. So they said no, and then I guess the Kings went, and by the way, Vlade, in a candid moment, probably a foolishly candid moment, said he had a better deal the week before. Now we're trying to scramble to figure out what that deal was, which could have been, whatever the Lakers were willing to part with. Because I would imagine, let's say it was Randall and, Clarkson and whoever, that's probably still better than what they got.
Right.
although I also heard through the grapevine that that the deal with New Orleans might have been better as well. And then after they waited long enough, New Orleans decreased the offer, and Vlade was like, "Oh crap, I better take this."
Well, that's interesting. I wonder what else New Orleans could have added into the deal in order to add value. From my understanding, a lot of the reason for the trade for the Kings part of it was that they were getting Buddy Hield. I mean, there was a lot of eye rolling going on around the league about them, getting Buddy Hield as the main piece in a DeMarcus Cousins trade, because Hield has not been that great this season or anything like that. He's been solid. I mean, he's a rookie. He's going to take some time to develop and everything, but they see him as this future star. And so that's how they were valuing Hield, and it sounds like most of the league doesn't quite value him that way, or at least that highly.
Right. Well, let's get back to the Lakers a little bit, because obviously that's going to be our focus for tonight. All right, so they might have fallen on their swords, or they might have just simply, I mean, it still is bizarre, because I understand the idea of like, let's protect the franchise, but still the franchise has been built on trading for these superstar centers. So it was just bizarre that they wouldn't do it. So we kind of think it sounds like somebody must have called up Jeannie and be like, what? And it must have been a big freak out, right? Because you don't just make these changes that quickly without like a call, emergency meetings and whatnot. So okay, so they sit down with Magic. Now at this point, Magic had already signed the contract. Like he's an official advisor on the payroll by today, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So at this point, so he's got influence and power. So he said, okay, let's go do this. We know that there's probably already some issues between Magic and Jim Buss, right? There's sort of like, who's the favorite son of the dad? Absolutely.
That's been something that's been sort of a subplot for years and years now, is this this notion that Jim and Magic just didn't quite really see eye to eye. Magic has been extremely critical of Jim Buss, all of his tweets and comments on ESPN and other places. Magic has not been a big fan of Jim Buss, but he has remained close friends with Jeannie Buss.
Okay, so we have that issue, and we knew that Magic coming in was probably, was going to take the job, because he knew that Jim was going to be on his way out. He's friends with Jeannie. Jeannie's like, don't worry, we'll be able to vote him out. So obviously that's what happened, right? The other siblings got together. It sounded like the other guys too, Jesse and I don't remember the other guys, the other brothers, but it sounded like they were ready to get rid of Jim as well.
Yeah, it does seem like in this instance, Jeannie acted on her own, but she did have the votes in order to get rid of Jim if they went that route. But that's at least that's what I've heard.
Okay, so fair enough. So they had that meeting now, but it was a little bit surprising that Mitch Kupchak gets fired as well. I mean, what's interesting about this is that I was kind of trying to figure out how long he's been the GM, because remember, he was the assistant to Jerry West for a long time, but it hasn't even been that long since Jerry left. When did Jerry West leave?
Oh, Jerry West, gosh, it all
like
blurs together for me. Yeah, well, no, it was earlier than that. But you know what, Mitch was groomed for a long time to become the GM of the Lakers. So it's something that it's a role that he feels like he's been in for quite some time now. And as I recall, if I'm remembering correctly, one of Mitch's first moves was adding Malone and Payton, and that was in 2003, I believe. So I know he had just recently taken over then.
All right, so it's been a while. So but was that as shocking to you as it was to me? I mean, the Jim Buss, we can get that writing was on the wall, and he'd actually promised to step down anyway if they weren't contending this year. But was it surprising to you that they got rid of Mitch now?
You know what? There's some ways that it is surprising, just because he's been with them for so long. I mean, realistically, like Kupchak has been with the Lakers in one role or another since I believe 1981 or 82. He's been around for a long, long time. This guy's been pretty much a Laker lifer when you look at his career, and so that element does make it a little bit of a surprise. Jim, as far as removing him from his position, yeah, the writing was on the wall, but there's also the fact that he's an owner. He's not really going anywhere. It's not like he's leaving the organization. He's just, being removed from that particular role. Whereas Mitch, I mean, he's being completely removed from the organization. He's lost his job, and so there is that kind of sad part of all this, because he's been around for so long. But the league is moving in a different way, and things at the top for the Lakers had kind of gotten stale. And there's only so many years that you can miss on free agents, and that you can struggle to get meetings with teams and then our players. And then when you finally do get a meeting with a player, you get like the LaMarcus Aldridge incident where it just doesn't go that well. It kind of falls flat. And that kind of stuff can only exist for so long, especially when you have a team that's trying to rebuild. So it did feel like it was time for a fresh voice to come in.
So, and the LaMarcus Aldridge thing was they gave him the Hollywood treatment, as I understand it, trying to pitch him on endorsement deals and all sorts of film and movie stuff. And I think that they misread that, right? LaMarcus Aldridge is not that guy, right?
Right, exactly. They went in trying to sell him on everything else other than, what he would be doing on the floor for the team, because, they didn't have much to sell him on the floor. So they had to focus on all these other things, all the peripheral stuff that Los Angeles offers. And so Aldridge wasn't too enamored with that, especially when he goes and he meets with like the San Antonio Spurs and they just talk basketball just about the entire time and about how their team has all this camaraderie and unity and everything like that. So it just wasn't what he was looking to hear.
Fair enough. So, there are some strikes, but then again, certainly with Kupchak's resume, it's very impressive. And look at what they have and who they picked. I mean, Zubac is a very good pick. Larry Nance is my favorite at Laker. Maybe at the end we can go over my Tarik Black beef I have with every Laker fan on Twitter of all time. We can talk about that later. But,
Okay.
there's some relatively astute picks. Jordan Clarkson was also a little diamond in the rough. Russell, I think, is going to end up being a legitimate starting guard at the very least, right? So, their track record is a lot better than a lot of other GMs, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you can't say that it's been all bad. Certainly, their drafting has been pretty good. People look at Russell and say, "Oh, well, he's not Porzingis." Well, that's true. But you know what? At the time, a lot of people were saying that Porzingis was a huge risk. So that Russell pick isn't necessarily a bad one. I mean, they did fine there, and yeah, they've done a good job drafting players. You certainly can't argue with that. It's more the free agency side of things and getting things done in trades that has been the big problem as far as Kupchak and Buss, at least in recent years.
Okay, and fair enough. But the other thing we can say, and that Kupchak is probably, if you get him a few drinks, he might, sort of complain about the elephant in the room, which was the Kobe contract that they signed that pretty much hamstrung them from signing anybody for several years.
Yeah, exactly. That deal they gave Kobe was certainly, I almost hesitate to say it's a mistake, just because seeing Kobe retire as a Laker and putting up 60 points in his final game and everything, while that may not matter as far as building a championship contender, that still has some value. I mean, as far as Lakers fans go, that's going to be an unforgettable moment. Now, is it worth a $48 million, $50 million contract over 2 years for an aging, broken down Kobe Bryant? No, but you can kind of understand why they did what they did, even if it wasn't really the right move at the time. But it did certainly slow up the rebuild. I mean, you could argue that this is really the first true rebuilding year where the Lakers are solely focused on developing young players.
That's very true. Now, to go a little bit further here, we had even more changes in-house, and that the most bizarre thing of all the things that happened today, I thought, was that the Lakers also fired John Black, their PR guy, who had been there for 25 years. And I don't understand how that happens, especially now. Like, that's the kind of thing you would wait until the season's over, replace him, whatever. And so what do you make of that?
I saw one theory on Twitter, and I wish I could remember who it was that tweeted it, but it was such a crazy day that it seemed like everybody was coming out with all kinds of things. But I saw one thought on him, and that was that John Black does a phenomenal job of protecting players who are already stars from making mistakes and things like that. But as far as helping guys who are younger players to really build up their brands, he can be a little bit stifling. And I've had very, very limited interactions with John Black, but from my very limited interactions, I could see where that could be true. But still, the perception around the league was that he's very good at his job. So I don't even have a firm grasp of exactly why that happened. I'm sure there's some things behind closed doors, but I don't know what those things are.
Fair enough. I mean, there's going to be a lot of conjecture on it. It's funny because, he had the reputation of being someone who was maybe, I don't want to say difficult, but certainly like big time, and treated everybody like they were still the NBA champions when they weren't, which just makes it more difficult. And I just kind of wonder if that sort of trickles up and people sort of hear that and, they're just like, well, let's just start over now. It's a fascinating thing that I'm kind of curious to hear more about because, again, it's just the timing of it is so strange for him. So what else do we have going on? So Magic comes in, they get rid of Bus, they get rid of Kupchak. Magic is now the official GM, right? Is that sort of what they gave him the title?
No, Magic is now the president of basketball operations, and it sounds as though it's not official, but I mean Woj has tweeted it, so this is happening because it's from the mighty Woj. But the GM is going to be Rob Pelinka, and Rob Pelinka used to be Kobe Bryant's agent. He's been agent for a lot of different players over the years. He's James Harden's agent right now, Eric Gordon. And in fact, that's how we found out about it because Eric Gordon was talking to reporters about Rob Pelinka and the potential move, and Eric Gordon started using absolutes and saying that it was a done deal. So that was how we knew that this is actually happening. Rob Pelinka will be the GM because Magic is so busy. He's going to be dedicated to the Lakers, but he can't be the GM and the president of basketball operations at the same time.
Right. I mean, I don't think anybody can. I think it's as we're learning with Vlade, if you don't have a command of the CBA, you're going to get, fleeced. And yet he still has his job. But, that's a real problem without that. And it's certainly fair to say that Rob Pelinka has a complete command of the CBA, having, negotiated for his players for all these years. I know Rob. He's a really great guy, and he certainly has a basketball mind. He played at Michigan, so he was a former player himself. So I think this is an interesting dawn, and there are probably a lot of people they could have hired, but this is a good hire. I feel like this guy is going to be able to understand the ins and outs, negotiate, and also understand how to properly recruit players. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at what the weaknesses of Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss were, right? Negotiating contracts, bringing in free agents, and being able to really sell the team. And you've replaced them with Magic Johnson, who I don't think there's a single person on this planet who can talk with as much passion about Los Angeles Lakers basketball as Magic can. I mean, you want to hear somebody tell stories about what it's like to win as a Laker. Magic is your go-to guy for that type of thing. And then you've got Rob Pelinka, who is phenomenal at negotiating deals. He's got the charisma. He's got the ability to converse with free agents on a more modern level than what we saw from Mitch or Jim Buss, who are both kind of more of a reserved personality. So in my mind, the Lakers have taken an area of weakness in their front office and turned it into an area of strength.
Absolutely. And so, no, that's good. So the moves, they're slowly shoring everything up. And so now we come to the moment where, okay, they're in the middle of the trade deadline week. It's insane. And I don't know how you'd ever expect to bring somebody else in. And then they're able to actually pull off a trade, which, I mean, I wouldn't even know if Magic has all the numbers of all the GMs around the league yet. But they pull off a trade, so let's go through that really quickly, which is, or we can take our time. Lou Williams is going to Houston for the corpse of Corey Brewer, and what else did they get?
And they get the Houston Rockets first-round pick in 2017, and it is unprotected, but that's really not going to matter because Houston's not going to be a lottery team anyway, but it is unprotected.
Right, so that pick's going to be 25 or whatever, right? 24, 25, 26, something like that. Not a great pick, even though it's a deep draft.
Right.
There are only a handful of, I guess, players picked at that late that have ever amounted to anything, but you never know.
Larry Nance Jr.
There might be a Manu in there or something like that. So what do you think about the trade? Who wins this trade?
You know what? I think it's fantastic value for Houston because as much fanfare as Lou has gotten this season, I think he's actually been a little bit underrated when you look at just his raw numbers. I mean, the production that he's had on the floor, he's a bad shot maker. He's a guy who takes shots that you look at and you think, man, that is not a good shot. That is not a shot that you want a guy taking the flow of the offense, and yet he makes them. I mean, he makes things happen. I can only imagine how much of a terror he's going to be in Mike D'Antoni's offense. So that's a big, big get for the Houston Rockets. I mean, when James Harden goes to the bench, now you've got both Lou Williams and Eric Gordon who can get the ball and just light you up. That's pretty impressive. And the fact that they were able to unload Corey Brewer and only give up a first-round pick, I mean, I definitely like it from the Houston side of things. A little bit underwhelmed from the Lakers side of things just because there were so many rumors flying around about how many teams were interested in Lou Williams and how there was this bidding war and everything like that. But I'll throw this out there. Arash Markazi from ESPN tweeted earlier tonight that the Houston Rockets 2017 first was the best available 2017 first rounder in a Lou Williams trade, which means a lot of these teams that were rumored to be interested in Lou Williams that may have had lower picks, like the big one today was the Charlotte Hornets. Those teams were not offering their 2017 first. They might have been offering 2018 or 2019 first rounders, and the Lakers were prioritizing finding a 2017 first because it is a deep draft. So in getting that for Lou Williams, you can see that as a win, even if they did have to absorb the contract of Corey Brewer.
Right, and needless to say that they might have their own pick if they can finish in the top 3, which might also explain why they're bringing in Corey Brewer, because he ain't going to help them win too many games.
Right, exactly. Lou Williams has been the best player on the Lakers. So just removing him off the team, that's going to hurt their win total at the end of the season. And right now they are 1 game up in the win column over the Phoenix Suns. The Suns are sitting at 18 wins, and the Lakers have 19 wins. The Lakers have the 3rd worst record in the league right now. And with that comes a 47% chance of landing in the top 3. However, if they fall to the 2nd worst record in the league, then that bumps them up to a 56% chance of landing in the top 3, which is the same odds that they had last year. So that is a difference. If you can fall that extra little bit and get to that 2nd to worst record in the league, obviously it's something that most teams don't want. But in this case for the Lakers, it would just be a gigantic win if they could keep their pick this year. So that's got value too. Removing Lou has value in that way.
I hadn't even looked at the Lakers' stats in a while, but I am flabbergasted because Lou Williams is averaging 18.6 points a game, playing 24 minutes, and he's he's shooting 44% from the field and 39% basically from 3 on high volume. So, and he's a great free throw shooter. So I don't think I realized that for some reason. He's been doing some serious work out there, and you know what? His defense is probably been as good as I've ever seen it from him. I'm not sure what Luke Walton has done with him, and even Nick Young has been playing fantastic defense as well for him. Wow. Of course, Houston definitely got the better of this deal, and it's exciting for them because they probably needed that 4th guard no matter what because of either the injury issue that could happen or just you need that kind of depth in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a win for them, and you know what I mean. Hey, if I'm one of the teams at the top of the West, if I'm the Spurs, if I'm the Golden State Warriors, if I'm any of those squads, the Clippers, and I'm running up against the Houston Rockets, I'm definitely more worried today than I was yesterday. Now that they've got Lou Williams, because Lou has been just that good this season. Like you said, I mean, he is averaging a ton of points in very short minutes. I mean, his PER is 24.1. That's phenomenal for a guy that's coming off the bench. Even his playmaking has been better this season. He's been better as far as his passing goes, and just across the board, he is turning in one heck of a season. And just on a personal level, I'm kind of excited to see him go to a playoff contender, just to see his performance and his efforts this season really go towards something meaningful rather than kind of being wasted on a Lakers team that really doesn't need to win games at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get some more. Let's talk about the Lakers a little bit more about their roster because now they'll get more playing time, I suppose. I mean, if Russell is ready to go and then Clarkson will get some more run, we might see some more Meta World Peace or my favorite, Marcelo Huertas. But let's talk about Tarik Black for a minute here because I got in trouble. I don't know if you saw this where, it was, in December, maybe I'm watching a Lakers game and I tweeted out, I should find it, but basically the gist of it was that Tarik Black doesn't have NBA skills. And what I meant by that was that he doesn't have any offensive skills because, no one, I don't talk about defense as much anyway, but I said he didn't have NBA skills, meaning he can't really shoot. He can't dribble. his moves around the basket are pretty bad. Like every once in a while I'll throw a hook in there or whatever. But people freaked out and misunderstood me and said that I said he wasn't an NBA player. Do you want to turn me around? Can we have like some sort of intervention for me?
Sure. I have seen. To be honest, I didn't know it was you that all those tweets were directed at. But I've seen all those comments from all kinds of guys saying, Tarik Black with a huge slam dunk, but it doesn't matter because he's not an NBA player.
Yes, those are all directed at me, and they don't even mention me anymore. Or maybe they still do. I don't know. But it's terrible because listen, every coach would love Tarik Black on his team, right? High energy, he gets rebounds, he really hustles and stuff like that, But let's face it, like there isn't really anything he can do besides dunk it on a putback or like an alley-oop or drop step on a drive and a little dish to him, right? Like you see what I'm seeing, don't you?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say like he's starting for the Lakers right now, but I wouldn't call him a starting center. But right. I think he definitely has redeeming qualities. I mean, you've got a point guard with D'Angelo Russell who, the pick and roll is his bread and butter. And Black is big enough, strong enough, and agile enough to run it very, very well. He's a nice role man to have. Obviously, he's not going to do much picking and popping or anything like that because he doesn't have a jump shot. But he's a nice guy to get rolling to the basket because defenses have to stay honest on him. I mean, if they don't, he's going to catch a lob at the rim and he's going to finish it. He is an absolutely tireless worker. He hustles like crazy out there. He's like a Tasmanian devil. I mean, for that short period this season when the Lakers were playing Tarik Black and Thomas Robinson side by side, it wasn't always pretty. But it was some of the most frenetic basketball I've ever seen with two guys who just go insane after the ball out there, and it can be a lot of fun to watch, and so he has a lot of endearing qualities when you watch him play out there on the floor, and as a backup center, I think he's definitely not a bad player. I mean, he definitely has his shortcomings, but yeah, I think he's turned in a good season overall.
Okay. I mean, I can go with all of that. And I've had to constantly respond and reply and explain. I never said he's not an NBA player. I simply said he doesn't have offensive skill, or that's certainly what I tried to say. And but again, I just want to be on record here so everybody can hear me that I like him. I as a coach, yeah, you would like to have a guy in that team, certainly as your second big man off the bench or something or whatever, but not necessarily starting. But listen, he's serving a purpose right now, which is the crowd gets into it, but also they're gunning for that top 3 pick. And so this is the guy that you want to have in there because, no matter what he can do on defense, he's still short, doesn't have the long arms, not really quick. So he's just simply going to be limited by his physical abilities, and against many teams in the NBA, oftentimes it's just not enough. But you're right. The effort is there, and that's what everyone, should respond to. And I do. So I want to make sure everyone's clear out. So thank you for helping me understand that and giving me at least a chance to babble about this for a second.
Hey, no problem. And let me add this about Tarik Black. There's a lot of qualities he has off the court that are really valuable to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. Just to give you a quick story here, I went to media day for the Lakers. Media day is just actually absolutely swarmed by media. There's people everywhere, and a lot of the players are kind of just scooting along on the perimeter. And they're if you draw them over and get them and ask a few questions to them, they're totally fine and everything. But they're not seeking out reporters and looking to get into interviews or anything like that, except for Tarik Black. Tarik Black held court in the center of the floor, stood there for hours on end, answered every single question asked of him, and he just tried to set an example for all the young players on the team. He's a really fascinating guy, and he's quite a role model. He just picked up a master's degree, so he's the kind of guy that you want around these young players. So that certainly brings value to the Lakers as well.
Wow. Wait, what did he get a master's degree in?
African American Studies.
Okay, wow, that's very impressive. So yes, you're right. That all those things are terrific. And I think I even said, by the way, in that original tweet, I said something about great locker room guy. I know I mentioned that. I have to go find it, but anyway, I mean that was terrific stuff. And listen, I think we covered a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things to cover. We kind of got into it, and this was awesome. I can't thank you enough for coming on and joining us.
Hey, no problem. Anytime.
You got it. Well, don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Trevor?
Hey, I'm in.